Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is Wellness Wednesday with your virtual pharmacist. I'm Dr. Marsie Ross, founder of EdLyn Essentials. And tonight, boy, oh boy, do we have a great conversation for you guys today. We have Dr. Tiffany C. Wilson, board certified OBGYN, and she's going to help us walk through the topic of contraception and misconception. A lot of people, welcome, Dr. Wilson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, this is a hot topic. One of the things is first, just doing a little bit of housekeeping. The only thing we say on this show on Wellness Wednesdays is to engage. We want to hear from you. We want to engage you, find out what you guys think about the topic, which is a sizzling one tonight. But we want you to engage, ask questions, comments, and then share. It's nothing like being able to see the replay and see the comments from people who have seen it after the live feed. So definitely we welcome you guys, and let's get started on this hot topic. So today we're talking about really just contraception and what are people talking about and what that conversation looks like for families or couples or partners who either want to take a break from having children. Some couples decide they don't want to have children at all. And then other couples are just in between. Are they done? Are they not done? Are they a blended family? What are we going to do? And some of the challenges that women and men right now are facing with answering that question or dealing with this question, the topic of contraception.
That is a super important topic, Marcie, and we are so excited to be able to walk you through this and be ready to dive right in.
That's right. So one of the things too is, so what's the big deal? So one of the things is for some men, they don't even consider a vasectomy. I know that, the topic comes up and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Some of that seems to be changing with some of the current generation because, men are, not to say that men weren't hands-on before, but now the expectation is that men take paternity leave. And so the conversation about family, about, starting a family, stopping a family, taking care of a family is not just solely on the woman anymore. So how does that look for you in that conversation you're having with women who, and men too, around contraception?
So actually that conversation is very broad and sort of covers contraception that can be used by both men and both women. We usually one of the best times that I find we can have this discussion is after the couples have multiple children. And now they come to me and they're like, look, we are done, or at least we think we're done. Mm-hmm. So what are our options? Mm-hmm. So, of course, we go through all of the hormonal and non-hormonal options for women. Everybody's relatively familiar with things like our birth control pill and maybe even the patch or the contraceptive ring, the injection. But then we start getting into a discussion about our long-acting contraceptives, because a lot of the times these families are like, we're pretty sure we're done, or at least we're taking a long break, like you said. So then we start looking at our injectable and implantable contraceptives, specifically like our long-acting implant, or we're looking at our intrauterine devices, or IUDs for short. Mm-hmm. And then there are some people who are relatively sure that they're done. So we start talking sterilization. Now, sterilization is where it gets a little hot and steamy in the room.
Okay. Can imagine.
Everybody knows that, there's female sterilization. Everybody knows about your good old tubal ligation. Mm-hmm. Everybody is good with that. But then I bring up that V word, and unfortunately it's not vagina, but it is vasectomy.
Yeah.
It gets quiet as church mice in the room and all eyes averted. But vasectomy is also a very real, very feasible contraceptive method for a family who's looking to either be done with their childbearing or delay their childbearing for a certain amount of time.
Right. So what do you find that for men, what do you think their hesitancy is? And so have you found that women too, how does that translate to the frustration that women will feel if a man is so resistant to consider a vasectomy?
I think some of what is going on is that there's just a misconception about what happens during a vasectomy, what it means for you. And some of it, unfortunately, is a little bit of an ego. There are, a lot of the times what I hear is, but this is taking away my manhood, it's taking away my ability to reproduce. And I'm like, well, in the purest sense of the term, yes, but when you're asking your partner to tie her tubes or do some other sterilization method, you're taking away her ability as well. Mm-hmm. So we start off a lot of the times just trying to break the ice and sort of make our partners understand that, this is fair on all sides. Either way, someone will have the inability to reproduce or at least have it sort of subdued for a certain amount of time.
Right.
Once we get past that, a lot of the misconception has to do with how involved the procedure is and how much recovery time is involved and, just how that particular procedure or surgery goes. So I spent some time sort of breaking down those barriers, and actually the advances in technology for that are awesome. So we've gotten to the point now where not only is the recovery time pretty minimal because the surgery is already relatively minor, we've gotten to the point where now we have what we call incisionless or no scalpel vasectomy. So wow. Literally.
So it's come so far. So, and I'm just thinking about the different, like I said, the different generations where the conversation is very real. But it seems like, it's not always a comfortable conversation. You think I started a family with this person, but how can I, it seems like it's at least, in many households, it's an uncomfortable discussion on both ends.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so sometimes what I do to try and break the ice, if everyone is in the room, then the conversation is pretty open and sort of free flowing because I'm usually the person monitoring the conversation. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the times what happens is, especially recently postpartum women or women who are coming in for their annual exams, they are having this discussion without their partner being in the room.
Okay.
And so, I ask them, okay, so if you go home and have this conversation with your partner, and then I get this deer in headlights look, mm-hmm. and I'm like, okay. So we take a couple of steps back and I'm like, all right, so you think this is going to be a hard conversation to have with your partner. And there's that slow nod. And I'm like, all right, cool. This is what we do. Bring your partner to the doctor with you. Mm-hmm. We'll follow-up visit, bring them. We will have the conversation. I will bring it up. Blame me. Blame the doctor. I don't want any tension in the home, but I do think it's important that everyone be equally educated about what the options are. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a common misconception that there really aren't.
Thanks so much for chiming in, Jordan and Janice. So that's a very good question, like in terms of long-term birth control options for men other than vasectomy. I know when you hear the word sterile, I can only imagine what thoughts go through everyone's mind, because is that what they consider for a woman? Tying your tubes is also, in a medical term, is that sterilization?
Yes, it is sterilization, whether it be done to a man or a woman. And I know there is a stigma attached to that word. It makes it seem like you're losing something here. But for a family who at least wants to delay their childbearing, is definitely something to think about.
Mm-hmm. And so, so for a man, when they get a vasectomy, is it sterilization, or is it just because there's incisionless? Are there different types of vasectomies?
There are different types, and really the two major differences are the no scalpel vasectomy versus the traditional vasectomy method. Either one is considered a sterilization method because basically what it does is interrupts the transfer of sperm to the ejaculate. So unfortunately, yes, in the purest sense of the term, it is sterilization. But what is awesome about vasectomies, and what I think a lot of people also don't know, is that vasectomies can be reversed. So there are times when a vasectomy can actually be a sort of temporizing measure until you're ready to bear children again, without necessarily having your female partner undergo everything.
Okay.
The next discussion we have in the office is, you have a couple in the office, they're talking about contraceptive methods. And let's be honest, the female partner gets indignant. I've done all this. I've borne the children. I've gained the weight. I've gotten the swollen feet and ankles. I'm breastfeeding. I'm this, I'm that. And what's next is, and what are you going to do? And she's
Right.
there as her partner. So.
And you know what? I'm wondering if it's a conversation you think about having before. You know, you talk about, you know, when you're getting together, you talk about, well, do you want to have a family? You think about having that conversation like up front, right? When you're dating, you feel like you get to know each other, and then you proceed to, you know, starting a family. I'm wondering if that is something that needs to happen during that talk, you know, during getting to know each other. Like, well, so what do you think about, you know, what would happen after we have these children? You know, are you open to, you know, you have taken care of the birth control in terms of a vasectomy?
I think it's a discussion that as we evolve, more and more, I think people will be more comfortable about having these discussions out in the open. I also think some of it is maybe people even thinking that some of these things were left to be discussed behind closed doors. But I do think it's important, if you're going to talk about, you know, getting with this person, starting a family, then at some point it is, although albeit uncomfortable, at least in the beginning, I think it's worth it to have the conversation. Okay, you know, we kind of agree we want to have 2 to 3 children. What happens after these 2 to 3 children?
So true. That's so true.
Because there are many people who show up for their post-delivery visits with an oops.
Yeah.
We have to be very real and transparent.
So Janice has a great question. How involved is the reversal process? Is it another surgery? That's a really good question.
It is another surgery. Again, generally a minor surgery. Well, what happens is they try to bring the tubes together that were interrupted during the vasectomy process. And what's interesting is that it's ironically very similar to a tubal ligation reversal, where they try to bring the tubes back together for a female, but the success rates tend to be a little bit higher.
Okay. And then Jordan also had another question about, is the reversal for the incisionless vasectomy also incisionless?
I do not believe so. When I was looking back at how the incisionless vasectomy is done, I don't believe the reversal is incisionless, but I can certainly follow up.
That's a great question. So as Jordan especially are chiming in, it's making me wonder. So and Jordan, definitely feel free to chime in on this too, and any other guys out there watching, or women out there watching with their husbands or partners. So is it a conversation that men are now starting to have with their peers? That's a really good question. So, you know, is it, you know, we talk about, okay, so what birth control, what are you using? Right. I know for me personally, I have sensitivity when it comes to anything hormone based. So I had all my options were with anything that did not involve hormones. And so you talk to your other girlfriends, we find out what's working. What are you doing? What do you know, what's your doctor saying? I wonder for men, are they having these conversations about vasectomies? Because I know quite a few who've gone ahead and had vasectomies and are fine. And I wonder if they're having that conversation. So if you're out there, and even later on, if you're listening, we would love to know, are men talking about this with other men? Just to, number one, talk about any of their apprehension, or just being open about, you know, what's happening with them. Because I'm telling you, like you said, a lot of women are like, I'm not doing, I'm done.
I'm done. I've done. I put in my work, is what they say. I will tell you this, Marcie. I've had a few friends to have vasectomies, and I do think that the conversation is more free flowing. I think it's one of those man cave conversations, I'll be honest. Mm-hmm. But I do think that men are more open to having conversations about, you know, what their other options are. So I hope that Jordan or whomever is watching later on can chime in and let me know if I'm correct or not. But I at least know in my circles, the men are definitely having more conversations about what else can be done.
Right.
I think sometimes, and I applaud the men in my circle for this, they are considering what their partners, what their wives have been through, some of the risks. Some of those moms have had operative deliveries, cesarean sections, you know, difficult vaginal deliveries. And some of them, for whatever reason, are like, you know, at least I can do this. I can take on this particular role.
Right. And so the hot topic is, what do you guys think? Do you think that it should be on the woman? Do you think that it's on, the burden is on the woman's shoulders, or should men who have been resistant, or generations that have been resistant are raised that way, right? Should they, come to the table with the options that they have as well? And so that's something we want to hear back from you guys. Is it on women, or is it an open discussion for partners?
Men are more open. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I agree. I think that the generation is definitely changing.
I think the tide is shifting significantly.
Yeah.
I think many more people are just more comfortable having conversations that in years past you wouldn't dare.
Yeah, that's true. And Janice says 50 plus crowd. You're right. Doesn't talk about it.
That's exactly the point, Janice. Thank you for your input, but that's just it. It is a shift as we look at our different generations.
Yeah. I know for me, when my husband and I were talking about it, well, me personally, as a control freak, I was perfectly fine with taking the responsibility on for deciding. For me, I felt that with an IUD, I can decide until I didn't, I was taking a beat until I decided that was completely done. And that, to me, I wanted to be in control of that. But also, he wasn't an option for him. He was very clear and open. I'm not doing it. And, I'm 47, he's 48. So Janice, you're exactly right. I think it's generational, where some of the younger generations, like they talk about, so I'm going to go back to work, and are you going to take off, for paternity leave? So the discussions are totally different. I think even just from, 7-8 year difference, 10-year difference in age, definitely a different mindset.
No, Marcie, I think you bring up a good point that it is definitely a generational thing. When you mention paternity leave, I just thought it begs the question. Even now, you've got a lot more couples where, the woman takes her maternity leave, and then the man turns around and takes whatever paternity leave is his so that he can stay home. So there's a lot more shared responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I do think that we are transcending boundaries to even include our contraceptive choices.
And then Dr. Hall says it definitely takes two people in a relationship to make a baby, and two people need to be involved in the conversation. I agree. I think that, we keep going back to it's all about how you kind of, if you're nervous, you'd be surprised. I mean, you're like, I done had a baby with this person. I'm nervous. They know my social security number. But I'm scared to ask this man or my partner to consider a vasectomy. And I think on a woman's part too, we are nervous from, just not knowing, that thinking, oh gosh, what if something goes wrong? And so we are too. I think we need to break down those barriers within our own self to even have them, consider it as well.
Documented and well studied is with female sterilization, there is also the concept of what we call tubal regret syndrome. Mm-hmm. And it's very important and very real to have a discussion because in years past, a lot of people didn't really vocalize, and women felt like it was just them sort of unfortunately suffering in silence. But what we know and what is documented is that the younger that a woman is when we actually decrease her ability to bear children by tying her tubes, the higher likelihood that as she gets older, she will have the quote unquote baby fever, mm-hmm. and she will want to bear another child. But with sterilization procedures for women, they are generally not meant to be reversible. And so it's really important to consider that.
Jordan also had a great point. And I think it also comes to education too. Jordan, being in the as a medic, then looking at the stigma surrounding vasectomies is almost non-existent now. Do you feel like that's non-existent in your world?
Right.
Or do you think in terms of your peers, is the stigma non-existent? So just let us know, is that just, from your perspective, or do you feel like it's a generational thing? And that's,
I'm interested to know what the feedback will be on that, because I think in the medical field, potentially the stigma is less so because there's more education about risks, benefits, reversibility, things like that. But I do wonder if in the community at large, there is still a lot of education that we as healthcare providers can undertake in making sure that the stigma is nil across the board. Mm-hmm. That's something we really need to consider.
I agree. Now, do you think that the stigma in the African American population is different? Because, I think as Black people may have some hesitation with feeling like, especially Black men I'm not sure. That's a great question for the audience. Is like, do you think that is part of the stigma, that it's another Tuskegee where they're going to do something to me? I don't trust. And so to go in and to go in, especially with the history surrounding male genitalia and just operating and, all the horrible things that have been done in the past, you think that carries forward with anything that has to do with their maleness?
I think it does. I'll be honest. I certainly think it does. I agree with Jordan that, generationally, those thoughts are getting better, but there is always history. And I think people are always concerned that history could repeat itself. So in speaking to men in the African American community, and not only just about vasectomy, but about healthcare options in general and surgeries, there is always still that little bit of fear, that little bit of concern that something may go wrong, that, something else will be done aside from what is supposed to be done. And there is a general lack of trust for the healthcare community. What I do think is helpful, though, is as more African-American and minority providers enter the healthcare field, people are becoming a lot more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully that stigma is decreased, but it's definitely there.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask is talking about just continue to talk about the non-invasive options. We had a conversation earlier, and you shared about some of the old school methods of birth control that are available for women that I was really surprised are starting to come back, that some women may not know about.
Yeah, we've got some things making a comeback. So in years past, there were things that sort of showed up in a museum, things like contraceptive sponges and diaphragms and cervical caps. And I'll be honest, even up to about 10, 12 years ago, when I was in medical education and coming up through some of my training, those options were just that, historical. But in the very recent past, 2 of those options are actually making a strong comeback in the community. There is a new diaphragm on the market, and by that same company, a cervical cap that's also being marketed for women who feel like they need more options. As you rightly mentioned, Marcie, there are many more people with sensitivities to hormones. And in general, prior to the diaphragm and cervical cap reappearing, you had one non-hormonal intrauterine device, or you had barrier protection, and you better pray.
Right.
So very pleased to see that, the pharma industry and in general healthcare is trending back towards things that are, effective and giving more options.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. We certainly appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. Those who were able to attend live, thank you so much. The engagement was awesome. We are healthcare practitioners, and we always like to say this is for a conversation, for a platform for us to just share thoughts. We are not saying that anything we're mentioning is for you to take and not go to your doctor. These are conversations that you should use as a platform to have the discussion, if you choose to, with your partners and with your healthcare practitioners, but should not replace any medical care. But we thank you guys so much for another wonderful conversation with Wellness Wednesdays. Share. Oh, Janice has a question before we go. Let's see. And then Dr. Hall had a question about sex lives change, and it has nothing to do with procreation. That, to me, I feel like that could be a whole nother conversation.
A whole nother discussion.
Whole nother talk. And we've kind of been on this journey where we're talking about menopause, and we're talking about just hormones and feeling sexy and your body changing and your intimacy with your partners. And so tomorrow, actually, Dr. Hall will be having a great discussion. You and Dr. Hall actually on Real Talk Thursdays. Is it 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time?
9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tomorrow we will be talking about how to take care of your most precious flower and how to be a good gardener to your most precious flower.
So Janice and Dr. Hall, that's something that we can continue the discussion on Real Talk with Dr. Kanisha Hall. If you definitely go to her page and sign up, you'll get all the information about her Facebook Live conversation and talking about your flower. And Nellie's here. Hey, Nell Bell, how are you? Yes, Dr. Hall.
You tune in tomorrow talking about sexuality in your 40s. Dr. Hall, I hear him calling your name.
Okay. We have a lot more conversations to be had on Wellness Wednesdays, and then on Thursdays you have Real Talk. So we'll definitely be tackling these topics, I think, from a healthcare practitioner, but also as mothers and women, having a conversation about just what helps us live our very best life, whether it's diet, exercise, taking our vitamins, getting enough sleep, just opening up these conversations so that we don't have to do anything in the dark. We're building a community where we are here in this thing together and ready to live our best life, because healthy is the new beautiful. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week, and tune in tomorrow for Dr. Hall's conversation on Real Talk Thursdays. Don't worry, as women, that's right. Oh, Kanithia, you didn't miss it. You can do the replay.
Right.
All right, guys, talk to you soon. Good night. Thanks, Dr. Wilson.